people assume that people are either born negotiators or not. And I think that's a super dangerous assumption to make. Coming back here, 16-year-old going to the bar, being pushed out by a bouncer who didn't want me there. Yeah. That was really surprising.
You actually converted to the Muslim religion?
Culturally, yeah. For them, it's not accepted to not marry outside of your religion.
We give a quick voice note from somebody that the guest on the episode knows.
Oh. Yeah. So my quick reaction, don't call me for a hostage negotiation. I think you'll get shot at the spot because I'll just be like, what? You're asking that? No way. So a hostage negotiation is a different field.
Why do you think people are generally so fascinated about this skill of negotiation?
So negotiation is something that we learn already when we are babies. To get our parents to do something that we want, we already negotiate. Very competitively when you're a kid, because you just start crying a lot to get your way, very manipulative. But everybody negotiates every single day. You're negotiating with your partner, you're negotiating in business, and that is why negotiations are central to anyone's life. The funny thing is, a lot of people think that you're born to either be a good negotiator or a poor negotiator. And the reality is everyone can make a deal, but there's only a few people that can make a great deal. And that is why negotiation is such an interesting topic.
And you actually started your own company, of course, in this skill of negotiation. Maybe you can say a bit more about that.
So 3 years ago, I started on a journey creating Impact Negotiation Group, co-founded it with a partner of mine. And yeah, we specialize in advising on commercial negotiations and training people to become better commercial negotiators.
Great. So maybe we can dive into that a lot more later on, yeah, and maybe get some actual practical tips from you on negotiating, because people, I think, always find that very interesting. But maybe we can first take it back to Marc as a child, during your upbringing. What were the things that you went through, and how do you maybe tie that back to what you do now?
Yeah, go back way in time. Well, I've had a very international upbringing. Grew up all over the world. I've lived in Brazil, the US, Taiwan, the Netherlands whilst growing up. My father was working for a large Dutch multinational. So every couple of years, we got picked up, moved around to the world, and culturally very diverse places from South America to Asia, which was at the time not great. I didn't like it as a kid. Looking back, it has been a fantastic opportunity, which nobody will ever take away from me again. I've seen so much of the world. I've met so many interesting people, learned so many cultures, which has been fundamental to how I grew up and how I look at the world today.
And how do you think being dropped in so many different cultures and different situations, what kind of character building does that do? What kind of skills do you learn at such a young age, being dropped into these different situations?
Wow. First, I think you grow up really fast. Well, you've had a similar upbringing. I think you grow up extremely fast. I've always been told you're older than, or you act older than your age, and that I think has to do with the fact that you needed to adapt so many times. You needed to learn how to behave in different circumstances very quickly. You needed to be culturally aware of different cultures. So yeah, the short answer, it's made me grow up very quickly. It's given me a much wider perspective of the world and how people look at it. And
why does it help to have a wider perspective? Why does it help to better understand other people? How do you think that impacts your work that you do now?
So, I mean, the world is not small anymore. We're global. We're interacting internationally with different cultures, different people. The current, you cannot compare the Netherlands of 50 years ago anymore with the Netherlands of today. It's much more multicultural. It's much more diverse. We have access to global opinions. We're bombarded with global opinions, and being able to place those perspectives is really relevant. And if you've always just seen the Dutch perspective outwards, I believe that you're probably missing someone's perspective or someone's side to give you an idea of who's right or wrong. Well, there is no right or wrong. It's just someone's opinion, and it's being formed by how they grew up, the situation that they've lived in, the circumstances that they've grew up in. And having grown up internationally, it's given me a lot of that knowledge to not just quickly jump to a conclusion to say they're right or they're wrong. And I think that's extremely valuable.
So it creates, basically what you're saying is it creates empathy for others' perspectives. And that's something that you can use in your kind of day-to-day work and life now as well.
Yeah, it really allows you to kind of see things from another person's perspective. And I think just linking back to negotiation skills, too many times people enter a negotiation from their own perspective. What do I want to get out of it? Why am I sitting across from you right now? What is my interest? What is my priorities? And great negotiators do all of that. They know why they are sitting there, but the great negotiators will also try and understand the position of the other party. Why are you sitting here? What are your interests? What are your priorities? Because that's the only way to really identify where more value can be unlocked. And otherwise, you're just entering into a very competitive head-on negotiation.
Yeah. And then after a very international upbringing, at some point you moved back to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Can you maybe explain a bit more about that? How is it then to come back to the Netherlands after you've been abroad for so long? Do you very easily fit back into the Dutch lifestyle, or how does that work?
Ooh, not really. It's once you've been international for so long. I returned when I was 16 back to
quite old.
Quite old
at an age where a lot of things are already going on at school.
Exactly.
Different friend groups.
Yeah. So luckily, I still had my friend group from my youth, and I could just roll back right into that friend group. But of course, dynamics have changed. People grew up. People are attending different schools. So finding your place there is interesting, difficult, because they're just going on with their daily lives as usual, and you're kind of dropping in. So you need to understand those dynamics. On the other side, it is also what were you used to? And I came back from Taiwan, where, being a very tall, blonde, white guy, I got away with a lot of things there. Yeah. So we used to go clubbing. We used to go out. We would be treated as expat kids, always getting into the best bars, getting VIP tables. And that was a very interesting lifestyle. And coming back here, 16-year-old going to the bar, being pushed out by a bouncer who didn't want me there, that was really surprising. So a bit of a culture shock. But very fun. I in the end, the Netherlands is a great place to live. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And then you ended up going to university here in the Netherlands. Yeah. You start kind of making the first real choices on your own about what you maybe want to do later on in life, what you want to study, what you want to learn, what you want to get good at. Yeah. If you can go back to that period in time, did you start making those choices yourself? Did you use others to kind of think through what could I be good at? Where should I go with my career? Or how did that go for you?
So now you're assuming that I had this master plan of how to design my life.
Could be.
For me, that wasn't the case. I think I was very, I was just flowing and being steered to whatever came along my path. It wasn't by design, especially even my first job was not by design. The simple way that I chose my university degree and what I wanted to study was I was really good in physics and maths. So naturally, you would expect I'd go and do an engineering study in Delft, for instance. And I really enjoyed that. But then I got a teacher of my last 2 years in high school who, I think he even got arrested for being a sex offender. I hated the guy. I literally hated him with a passion. And he completely removed that spark and my interest in science, which is a pity because I think I would have fit really nicely in doing that type of studies. And I would have thoroughly enjoyed it. But my economics teacher in high school, she was brilliant. She kept it very engaging, and that's where she sparked the interest. So naturally there, I was like, okay, well, if you've got such a dick teaching science and such an awesome teacher teaching economics, well, that's my path. And that's how I ended up in Rotterdam to study business. Then the choice after international business studies, what master are you going to do? So typically everyone in my studies went either to finance or marketing. Those were kind of the two key choices. And then my kind of feeling towards the science came back, and I studied innovation management, being the odd man out because I liked innovation. I thought that was the most interesting topic of my master's or of my bachelor. So that's what I focused on. And I think that's the key kind of common line throughout my life is constantly just doing what I liked.
It's funny to hear that you didn't consciously choose, but that actually people in your environment influenced your decision, right? So I think that that's maybe also an important reflection for other people and people listening, of course, that the people that you surround yourself with in different phases of life might eventually influence your life in ways that you could not have imagined.
You are the average of the people that you surround yourself with, and they will heavily influence your career. So if you're just hanging out with people that are drinking all the time, well, guess what? You're going to be drinking all the time as well. And I guess in our study time, we experienced that. We were surrounding ourselves with people that were just going out all the time. Guess what you did? So no, definitely. It has a massive influence on the next steps that you take.
Yeah, and you ended up in a first corporate job.
Yeah,
right. You're an entrepreneur now, but you started in a very big corporate, let's say.
Yeah.
How did that go? And was that a conscious decision, or how did you end up there?
So, doing my master's, some people have a plan of what they're going to do next. They select their master based on that plan. For me, it was really, I wasn't thinking about it. And I knew I wanted to work at a multinational. And the reason why I knew that was because that's what I've seen growing up. My father worked for a large multinational. It's kind of what I associated success with. Yeah. I didn't have any real entrepreneurs in my family, direct family. So I associated success with making a career in a large multinational. My first mistake of my life. So when I went and at the time that people were starting to get busy with looking for which companies to hire, to apply for, I came across Shell. And they were doing these graduate programs. Now, they were doing these master classes. Now, I had already attended a couple of master classes of other companies because I thought, right, they'll pay for your little trip. You'll have fun a couple of days. You get to go somewhere and it's all paid for. So that was my real motivation of joining these master classes. Now, I applied for the masterclass of Shell, and they would fly you to, I believe, Spain at the time. So I was like, yeah, free trip. I'm going to apply for that and get in there. I didn't get selected, but they said, your profile is still very interesting. We want you to kind of walk through the graduate assessment process, and maybe you'll get selected for the next masterclass. So unknowingly, I was actually going through the recruitment process of becoming a graduate at Shell. And the day before my interview and the assessment day, I called a friend who was actually at Shell as an intern. And she was like, Mark, you do realize that this is your recruitment process to become a graduate. And if you screw this up, you won't get a second chance. So the day before. So I was like, well, okay, well, I'm already there. I am not going to change anything. So I'm just going to show up and see, which I think actually made all the difference because I didn't stress about it. I didn't overly prepare for it. I just showed up and I got a job offer. Being me, I was like, okay, one of the largest corporates in the Netherlands, thinking that making a corporate career was the best decision of my life. I just said yes and got into Shell and started my career.
And you just mentioned that that was maybe one of the first mistakes in your career. Looking back now, why do you say that it was a mistake?
I think mistake is a strong word because I learned a lot and I think it's given me a lot of exposure. But looking back, and you only learn this through exposure. I'm a very big believer in trying things and learning from mistakes and just doing. And I wouldn't have known if I would have gone straight into kind of a startup mode. I would have never experienced a corporate life. When I did join Shell, right from the start, I was extremely frustrated. I didn't like it. I was put into a graduate role under a new manager in a new role, so they didn't even know what to do with me. They didn't know what work to give. My manager was also 100% virtual. He was based in Malaysia. So I was just sitting in the office, no direct colleagues, and I was just sitting there for months, just wondering, what should I be doing? And I started escalating and started threatening, like, listen, if this doesn't change, I'm just going to leave because this is not what I signed up for. Happy I did that because that got me to very quickly move internationally. Got a job in Iraq and in Dubai for Shell, which had been fantastic. Because that was much more entrepreneurial. It was solving problems away from headquarters. But the mistake, I would say, is that assuming because of other people's career paths that should be your career path as well, instead of really kind of finding what are my own strengths and weaknesses and designing your own career path on that. And quite frankly, you simply won't know after you finish uni. It just comes with experience.
Yeah. And then in the end, you decided to leave Shell.
Yeah.
How did you make that decision? Was that just years of thinking about that and finally making that move? Or did you talk to people around you about what should I do next? And you were just saying that you have this system of thinking about what you're good at and what you're not good at. How did that go?
So my focus was, what do I really like? And out of the work that I did in Dubai and Iraq, I was in contracting and procurement, so really responsible for large deals. It was awesome to negotiate those deals, and that's what I got the most energy from at a very young age, at the start of my career, being made responsible for hundreds of millions of euros and to negotiate that. That was really exciting. The dynamics between people and the emotions that came out of that. I mean, I've seen chairs being thrown in through the room in negotiation rooms. I've had someone take off their pants in front of me and show them their ass to me in a negotiation.
Quite extreme.
Yeah, that was like, how did that come about? Well, it was because we put a very extreme demand on them, and they pretty much didn't like that. So they went through that act. And I was just like, oh, this is just amazing. Just so much emotion, so much. It's such a nice game. So when I came back from working in the Middle East, having a lot of responsibility, and then being pulled back to come back to the Netherlands and being put in a corporate office in Rotterdam, I just felt kind of constrained with how they divided up the roles, the responsibility, stay in your lane, be doing this. And I started challenging that a bit because I wasn't used to that when I was working in the Middle East. So I actually raised this with HR, and I said, "Listen, what's your perspective on me, and where am I going to go? What's my career path?" And they were pretty much like, "Yeah, we see you as a high potential, and it's all good, but yeah, you just need to sit out your time and opportunities will arise in due course." And I just didn't accept that because I didn't like the job that I was doing at that stage. And it didn't really seem like they had a plan for me. So I just started looking for an alternative that focused on negotiation. And that's how I made my next step. I just move towards the company, the Gap partnership, towards what I really enjoyed, and that was negotiation. So,
and you joined a company that, like your current company does, helps other, let's say, B2B businesses in their negotiation strategies and their tactics for their ongoing business. You did that for a few years. You kind of got some expertise there, and then you decided, okay, I enjoy this. This is what I want to do. The jump to entrepreneurship.
no, not exactly. So I joined, first started giving trainings in negotiations, then moved to the consulting team. When moving to the consulting team, I noticed that it was a very small part of their organization, and there were only a few people dedicated to working on that. And what I found out is we were doing a lot of innovation as well. The way that we were working, the way that we were approaching consulting projects, a lot of it was also my input into how we could do that better. So I quite quickly felt, yes, the Gap partnership, very good at training, really specialists in training, but not so much in the consulting business. That in combination with a working culture that did not fit me at all. I towards the end, I really did not enjoy the culture there. I said, okay, I can complain about it, which I was doing a lot with my colleagues. And my colleagues were also complaining a lot towards me about the working culture. At one point, it just got so much that I was like, okay, if I'm constantly complaining about it, why continue in this? So at one point, there was another escalation there where a very senior manager said something to me. And at that moment, I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm gone. And literally the next day, I was applying for jobs out, which was an escape. And I must say, looking back on that, that was not thought out. It was an escape out of a company culture that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Where I moved to NPM Capital, private equity, as a similar role, advising on commercial processes, negotiations. And that company culture was fantastic. So, but was it where I desired to be? No, it was a reaction to a situation where I just wanted to get out of it, which was a really smart thing to do because it was impacting me mentally. It was just not giving me a good feeling inside. So I had to cut the ties, and I could have done that by just quitting my job and then taking time out to see where am I going to move next. But I had 2 kids and a house to pay for, so that wasn't going to be a smart decision. So I just looked for a new job and had an escape. Now, whilst working at NPM, that's where I didn't have that stress of not liking where I wanted to be. And I was doing, again, things that I enjoyed, but then I felt a bit more restricted in how wide I could take it because I could only work with the companies that NPM invested in. And then I got approached by an ex-colleague who said, I'm also leaving the Gap, shall we just catch up? And during that catch up, we kind of came up with the idea, right, why shouldn't we be doing this ourselves? Because we've got the knowledge, we've got the expertise, probably better than what the Gap has. Shall we take that jump? And that's when the seed started of kind of, okay, let's go for it. Yeah.
And can you maybe say a bit more about your current company? So what is the setup? What does it look like? With how many are you? What kind of businesses do you help?
Yeah, so we started with 2, me and a co-founder, and we're now with 4, soon 5, based in partners, so equal partners in the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and Germany, and we target commercial negotiations. So we work with large enterprises, so large corporates, but also with small companies. So that's the beauty about negotiation. Every company negotiates, and I personally like working with more the small medium-sized company with about 1,000 employees because they rarely invest properly in developing their negotiation skills, and the impact we can have there is huge. Work with us for a period, and they'll just see their results coming in. And When you work with a much larger corporate, yes, you'll have definitely a positive impact, but it's not as extreme as you would experience when working with smaller companies.
And why do companies actually need consultancy services in the craft of negotiating? What do you see as the biggest mistakes that B2B companies make now in that space? Like, where can you really help them?
I think there's a couple of key areas. One is people assume that people are either born negotiators or not. And I think that's a super dangerous assumption to make. Negotiation is a skill that can be developed and needs to have specific attention to get better at. You've been in sales functions.
Yeah.
In your interviews, have you ever been tested on your negotiation skills?
No, never.
Which is bizarre. You're tested on your sales skills, but sales is not the same as negotiation. And when people are in account management or in procurement or in sales, it's crazy that they're not testing people's negotiation skills, because it is an improvable skill. And where that's one aspect that we focus on, highlighting skill deficiencies, kind of bursting that bubble of people thinking that you're either a good or a bad negotiator, or because you've been in sales for 30 years, you must be a great negotiator. No, that's completely false. Being good at sales doesn't mean that you're a good negotiator. It might mean that over 30 years long, you've been closing deals at margins that you might have doubled or tripled if you were a good negotiator. So that is one thing that we address, skill deficiency. And the other thing is, I fundamentally believe anyone can become a great negotiator by doing one thing, and that is properly preparing. The difference in a average negotiator and a great negotiator is a great negotiator prepares, is proactively thinking about, okay, how am I going to take control of this negotiation? How am I going to guide this process to my ideal outcome? And you cannot do that if you're just winging it, if you're just showing up in the moment. You really need to have a clear methodology of preparing, of aligning internally. Yeah. So when we do our consulting projects, that's where we focus on. We focus on getting very complex organizations to align themselves on a plan, and we help people execute those plans with much better results than if they were just showing up and winging it.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Before we continue, a quick word about our partner and sponsor, LNGVTY. As we grow older, we all want to sustain peak performance, both mentally and physically. LNGVTY is a company that will do this for you by creating health insights and an action plan by which you can live your best life. So if you're interested, check the link below. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, can actually everybody learn the skill of negotiation? I think you just said that if people prepare well enough and they have the actual skills and capabilities to do so, that everybody can probably do it. Yeah. Certain people probably better than others. Are there any characteristics in people that lend themselves well to becoming a good negotiator?
Yeah. So there are people that have advantages. And one characteristic that I would name as being a great advantage is empathy. Why? Because empathy allows you, as before I mentioned, trying to understand where the other party is coming from. But empathy also allows you to be much more in control of your own emotions, and also sensing what emotions are occurring at the other party. It allows you to kind of interpret what is going on with the person sitting across from me. That said, if you have a high level of empathy, there's also a risk associated with that, because oftentimes people with a high level of empathy really give the platform to the other party, and they can misuse that as well. Now, it doesn't give you a massive advantage, because in the end, I still believe that being properly prepared gives you the best advantage there is, because it allows you to then just proactively take control. So even if you are a bit better in empathy, still it's a trainable skill, and it is not the results, especially in complex commercial negotiations. It's not the deal making in the process. Commercial negotiations no longer occur where you're spending a couple of hours in the room with the other party, going back and forth, taking time outs, going back and forth again. They're usually weeks, maybe months-long processes where you have multiple interactions. So the execution skill of your negotiation is much less relevant than it was 30 years ago. It's much more, how do you coordinate that process? How do you control it? How do you prepare for it? How do you influence it? And that is short bursts of execution when you have a very detailed plan.
I think you just highlighted one of the myths about negotiation, right? You just busted one of those. It doesn't look like where two parties sit across from each other for hours in a room, you just said. Are there any other myths that people probably assume when it comes to negotiation that you could burst that bubble here? Are there any other things where you think people probably think negotiations are like this, but that's rarely how it happens?
So one of the myths that is a point of frustration to me is that whenever you open a negotiation book or whenever you hear some negotiation professor talk about, they're always stipulating the pinnacle of negotiation is collaborative negotiations. In my career as being a negotiation consultant, the reality is most negotiations are competitive. Wake up, realize that. And too many times I actually see, especially salespeople, predominantly focusing, I need to build this relationship, I need to be super collaborative, and that's the way to close deals. And then they come across to what I used to be, this really quite assertive, potentially aggressive procurement professional, and I would just run laps around them because I had no interest in the long term.
In being friends.
In being friends. I really did not care about what you thought of me. My priority at that moment was get the lowest price for the services that I wanted. And yes, that is super competitive. And that's not wrong. A lot of negotiations are competitive. The one thing you do need to watch out for, you do not need to be a dick to be a competitive negotiator. I would actually strongly advise you against being an asshole in negotiations because people don't want to do business with assholes. Yeah. But running a competitive negotiation is about the type of tactics that you use, is how you manage the flow. Competitive negotiations, for instance, always come with extreme openings and then making concessions unilaterally, giving away stuff. That's a competitive negotiation. Whereas collaborative negotiation is already positioning a deal that you can probably accept and together trying to build more value out of that. Rarely I see people doing that because it requires certain conditions to be met. For collaborative negotiations, there needs to be a high level of trust, transparency, but most importantly, there needs to be a lot of time that you can spend together with one another and mutual interest to actually create that value. If those prerequisites are not there, trust me, you're going to be in a competitive negotiations. And this is the myth that I always see when people attend negotiation trainings from universities, the Harvard Business Method, for instance. They focus so much on this collaborative stuff. Oh, that's what you always need to pursue. And that's not the reality. And if you go in always with that mindset, you're gonna be taken advantage of, because if you're across a competitive negotiators, they're just gonna thank you for all of your transparency, thank you for that relationship building, but I still want this, and they won't know how to handle that.
Maybe just switching gears, but in the same spirit of collaborative versus competitive negotiating. Do you negotiate with your own wife?
Every day.
Every day. And is that more collaborative or is that more competitive negotiating?
I would say the answer I should be giving is collaborative, but I think we're quite competitive. We're both. She's also has a background in procurement.
So she knows the tricks.
She knows the tricks. And in the end, happy wife, happy life. So I do notice that I concede and capitulate a lot, but not without a fight. But yeah.
No, and of course, the reason for asking is I know your wife, Iman. I've met her. She's from Egypt.
Yeah.
So very interesting dynamics there, I guess, as well from a cultural perspective. different cultures.
Yeah.
How would you say that manifests and shows up in your relationship at home with the two boys that you have? Do you see daily/weekly examples of that, of how it is to be in a relationship with somebody from a different culture?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Every day, and it's quite difficult in the sense that culturally, how you have been raised and what you feel is the right way to raise your kids, that is highly influenced by how you were raised yourself, and it's very different. So if I'm the more Dutch kind of upbringing, very giving kids a lot of responsibility early on and really pushing them, quite a tough upbringing. Like, okay, don't whine, do your stuff. Very, yeah, I would almost go and say Spartan. Whilst I would say my wife is much more caring, much more, oh, I want to help you with that. That sometimes causes friction, where I would say, hey, no, toughen up and just go and do that. My wife is a lot more accommodating to give the kids what they're asking for, while I'm much more stricter. And that does create clashes. And who's right or wrong? Well, there is no right or wrong, and you need to communicate together a lot about it. Does that always go easy? No. But yeah, we both love our kids very much. We both have the best interest in them. We just have different opinions about upbringing, and that does create a lot of friction. But a famous quote of one of my mentors is, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. So it's, how do you ultimately accept someone else's opinion and not force your own upon them? And I guess that's the dynamic that we notice every single day between our raising our kids, between us as a husband and wife.
And you're married to Iman. Yeah. And I understood that as part of the marriage process, let's say, if we can call that a process, you actually converted to the Muslim religion. Can you maybe say a bit more about that? How did that go, and where did that come from?
Well, how did that go, or where that came from, is very, very simple. Culturally, for them, it's not accepted to not marry outside of your religion. So even though she was willing to go through with it without me converting, it would mean that from a family dynamic, that would basically mean cutting ties with her family. And that is, if you're going to get married with someone and pretty much demanding or asking, right, these are the consequences of you not going through with it, that you cut off ties, that's a huge ask. Whilst for me, it was not important. I've raised a Catholic, but not religious at all in the family. And if I just reflected it to my parents, it's like, will my parents mind if I convert? And what does conversion really mean? Would they not talk to me anymore? No. So would they mind? Would they literally look at me different because I, on some piece of paper, are now representing myself as a Muslim? And the answer very quickly was to that, no, they would not mind. They would not look at me differently. So then the question is, right, would I ask my wife to kind of create that conflict with her family, which is very much a cultural thing? Why would I not make that sacrifice? And the question is it even a sacrifice? I'm not expected to be a very religious Muslim. I don't practice Islam, but I did it to, recognize that, yes, I do love my wife, and it's a small sacrifice to do for her to be able to keep her family ties intact. So yeah.
And during that let's say again, that process, were you challenged by any people? Did any people react negatively to that? Did you get any pushback because of it?
No, I never got pushback of it. I think I surprised a lot of people because I'm quite outspoken.
Yeah.
I'm quite outspoken in I'm not religious, a religious person, and I'm very much of separating state from religion, and have a very strong political opinion about that type of dynamics. So when my friends heard that I was converting to Islam, they're like, "You're literally the last person that I would have ever thought about doing that." But yeah, hey, I'd like to surprise people.
Yeah.
Oh.
And looking to the future now, both from a career perspective and a family perspective. Do you have any plans? I mean, you said you never had a master plan going to university, right? Do you have more of a plan now that you're older and you need to think about those different type of dynamics? Or do you still do it very much based on intuition and kind of the flow that you were referring to earlier?
So the common theme in my career has always been, even in my life, is just do what you like. And the periods. I loved I loved the work that I was doing at the Gap. I just hated the culture. So the moment that I stepped out of that, again, I found myself in another thing, but I didn't really like the work I was doing. So I've now found out what I really enjoy, and I really enjoy this topic of negotiation. So that's the plan. Continue doing what I really like, and if I can earn good money with that, that's a very nice extra. Would I make a would I sacrifice a not doing something that I like for a bigger paycheck? No, I don't think I think that in the long run it would really depress me, and it would it would not make me enjoy life, because I do know when I do a job, I actually commit fully to it. So the plan is make sure that I keep liking what I'm doing. And of course, when starting a business, you do have to get a bit more strategic. Right now, it's not just me. We're now with 4, soon to be 5. And then organizational dynamics start to come in. Like, okay, what are our targets for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years, next 10 years? Where do we want to take it? Do we just want to keep it small, or do we want to grow the business? And so those are questions that we're asking ourselves now. Answers are: we want to grow the business, we want to scale, we want to be a key player in this negotiation space. But it's all very much still close to what I really enjoy. And that's the best advice I would give anyone, is pursue the things that you really like doing, because then it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. And the title for this podcast is, of course, the Midlife Crisis, right? And in our age range, let's say anywhere between 40 to 50 years old, men and women sometimes find themselves in a position where they do
stupid shit.
Where they do stupid shit, but they actually have a midlife crisis. Are you ever worried that that might happen to you, or do you think that the things that you just said will actually help you position yourself, to not get into that?
So my wife would argue that I already had kind of a burst of midlife crisis when I bought a golden BMW 3 Series.
A golden BMW 3 Series. Okay, that sounds like a typical thing to do.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was really kind of this splurge. I wanted a convertible, and it happened to be gold because it had to. That was a car that came by my path. Everybody thought, like, who the hell is this guy showing up in a not flashy gold, but kind of trimmed down gold.
Okay.
But it was a really a wrong kind of car to be driving around. And I had that car for about 6 months until I realized that myself. So I could argue I already had the midlife crisis. I think people get midlife crisis because they're doing things they don't like. But also a couple of things that I find really key is, A, do things that you like, but also give yourself time. And I think it's very difficult when you're raising a family. You're being lived. You have so many commitments privately, but also at work. I think it's really healthy to also sometimes just dedicate time for yourself and don't always factor yourself out. If you need to go and meet with friends or have a trip away with friends, just plan that in. Just do it, because if you don't, you are going to hit that point that you're like, what the hell am I doing it for? And I would describe that as a midlife crisis. So for me, I don't see the risk that much, except splurging on convertible BMWs. But yeah, who knows? I can't see the future, but I'm liking what I'm doing, so keep that up.
Well, we're moving towards the end of this episode, and what we always do is we give a quick voice note from somebody that the guest on the episode knows. Oh. And so we'd like to do the same with you, and then hear a quick reaction from your side. So let me grab this.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I am interested who that is. So I got to put those in.
Yeah.
Have a quick listen.
Okay.
Mark, Tom van der Vrede here. Diederik asked me to record a short clip, so here we go. Hey Mark, I think it's awesome that you now run your own negotiation company. To be honest, it didn't come as a surprise. We've been friends for a long time and walked sort of similar paths, studying at RSM, working at the same corporate, starting our own ventures, and even spending about a year and a half working in Dubai. And even back then, I mean, your love for negotiation was clear, but also, let's say, intense. I remember very well our daily taxi rides from the hotel to the office. They felt less like commutes and more like high-pressure negotiation drills. You'd grill the driver like a true hostage negotiator. You'd be shouting things from the back like, "Why this road? No, take a left here. It's faster. Trust me, I've timed it." At some point, you were leaning so far forward, you might as well have been driving. And by the time we pulled up into the parking lot, you were cool as a cucumber, right? Ready to crush the day. And I, on the other hand, needed 5 minutes and a paper bag to breathe into. And to me, that's classic Mark. Relentless, efficient, and always negotiating. Even if it meant terrifying a poor taxi driver at 7:30 a.m. to win a few minutes of time. But jokes aside, Mark, you're a true negotiator at heart, and I've learned a lot from you along the way. And if I ever find myself in a hostage negotiation or a situation, I know who to call. Anyways, thanks. All the best. Talk soon.
So my quick reaction, don't call me for a hostage negotiation. I think you'll get shot at the spot because I'll just be like, what? You're asking that? No way. So a hostage negotiation is a different field. And kind of the fact that he finishes with hostage negotiations, a lot of people kind of like the second top gurus of negotiation is Chris Voss.
Yeah, I read his book.
Yeah, I have a very strong opinion about it. I think, yes, it's a very interesting book to read, a very good read, very quick. Who does not want to read about hostage negotiations? I just fundamentally disagree with a lot of the principles in the commercial negotiation setting. He's a hostage negotiator. Stick to your expertise, which is hostage negotiations. I'll stick to the commercial negotiation expertise because they are different. The approaches is different. One key example is Chris Voss states in his book and in a lot of podcasts, never go first. Never make the first offer. Yeah, duh, if you're in a hostage negotiation and some guy is holding a gun to someone's head, you're going to rock up as a hostage negotiation and ask, hey, why are you holding a gun to that person's head? Why are you doing this? Whilst in a commercial negotiation, the anchoring effect is the most researched topic there is. And anchoring is you open first. And all the research points out you get such a massive advantage from that the advice Chris Voss gives its people, don't open first, it's just not backed by science. Science says always open first where possible. So that's a take on that.
Well, Mark, we're about to round off. Thanks a lot for joining this episode. One of the main reasons for inviting you on the show is that people are just fascinated with this idea of negotiation. Yeah. And I think that you've shown that through good preparation and by making sure that you kind of, upskill properly using the types of services that you and your company offer, that there is an opportunity for everybody to learn how to do that. Yep. So I think that people find that very interesting. And what I've taken away from this discussion as to how to avoid a midlife crisis, because that's, of course, very much the topic for the overall theme for this show, is you mentioned three things. You said, do things you enjoy, right? Make sure that whether that's in your relationship, in your family, in your career, or any other endeavors that you have, make sure you're having fun. Take some time for yourself, right? To sometimes reflect on how your life is going. What are you doing? Are you still making the right choices? And you said, I think one very important thing is that if you are in a situation where you're not enjoying yourself, take action.
Yeah.
Right? Move. Make sure you're going to different places, doing different things to find that space where you will enjoy yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you very much for being here. It was a great pleasure speaking to you, and good luck with everything now and in the future.
Thanks.